So, I think I'll actually change the starting player position again. So let's go back to events. And where do we want to move it? What seems good? Maybe here. This is pretty close to where we started it, but we go to set starting position player. Now, we don't have another map yet, so that's another thing we're going to want to do. So I click back over here, and if you right click on this, you'll see we can go to new. So that lets us make a new map. And the default name is map 002. And we looked at this a little bit, the map property screen. We looked at this before when we were using the tile set option, but let's look a little more closely here. You can give it a name. So the name is what shows up over here in this list, but the display name is what shows up in the game. So you can have all your maps just be named the default thing, map 002, and then the name in the game you could have it be called whatever you want, like Path in the Woods, or whatever you want. And you can always go back in there and change that later if as you're working on your project or whatever. But you can change that, and that way you can have it show up in the game differently than how you. So maybe like you have something that you called this map to help you remember what it is, but it's not actually like the actual name, so it'll just be like Path in the Woods is your name for you to see it, but maybe in the game you want it to be, Sunshine Forest or something. So maybe you want to call it South Road or, something like that. So this name will actually show up in the game if you see like your location. Most prominently it will show up in the save files. As your save games, it'll say like, your location here. But you can also, have it. There's plugins and things you can do to have it like display the name as you go on the map, and there's all sorts of stuff you can do with it. So that's one thing you can do. But you don't even have to have a display name. The display name is optional. You just have to have the regular name. I'm just going to go leave it like that for now. So the tile set, again, we can pick, and there's other options. There's inside, there's dungeon, there's SF outside, which is short for science fiction outside, and there's SF inside, same thing except for the inside stuff. So inside is inside the buildings, things like that, caves or whatever, and we'll be using those. For now I'm just going to pick outside again. So here we have width and height. So these are the number of grid spaces, so it says horizontal size of the map and the vertical size of the map. So the other one was the default size, so 17 by 13 spaces basically that you can move. So you can play around with this, but again, you don't want to get like too crazy with this necessarily. Another thing you'll want to be careful with too, and this can go pretty high. Like I think the limit's 100 or something. If I remember right. No, it's more than that. Okay, I don't remember. Maybe it's a lot higher. Maybe 100 is an old version, but but you can make them bigger. But the things you'll have to consider is, you got to fill up all that space with stuff, and the bigger you make it, the harder that becomes. And also, you got to consider people's computers and things, because if you have a really big map with a lot of stuff going on it, then it kind of like it'll make your game lag, and so you gotta kind of take that into consideration. I generally, like, unless it's something really huge, I don't like to make anything bigger than like 50 by 50, and even that's big. I don't even like to make them that big, honestly, for most of my maps. So, but it's up to you. For now, we'll just stick to the default size because that's good enough for now. We can see. Because the other way you can do it is just by making smaller screens and things, and then just have the player move through them more frequently. So it's up to you. So scroll type, it says whether to wrap around from one side to the other. So if you want your screen to repeat itself, I don't know, if you think of the old like Pac-Man games, this is the thing that comes to mind for me, where it's like you go out of the screen on the left side and Pac-Man will come back in on the right side. It's that sort of a thing. It doesn't exactly work like that, but it's pretty similar to where you can repeat it over and over. It's useful for certain things, but most of the time you're not going to want to change this. You're going to want to leave it at no loop, and then it'll work like it normally does. But you can choose to have it loop vertically or loop horizontally or loop in both directions. So encounter steps is for battles. I'm not super interested in battles, so we probably won't do a whole lot with the the battle menus and all that, the battle system and everything. But this is for random encounters only. So this is the average number of steps between random encounters. So it's not a guarantee. It's not like, okay, 30 steps and then you're definitely getting into battle. You can get into battle in 5 steps from the last time you got in one. But the higher you set that number, the longer it'll generally take between your random encounters. So if you feel like your encounter rates are too high in your game, then you might want to, you're getting them too often, then you might want to raise that number so that you get them, a little bit less often. But unfortunately, it's a little bit randomized, so no matter what, you might have those times where it's like, oh, I just got in a fight, and now there's another fight. So it's, but the lower that number is, the more frequent it'll be, generally speaking. So we don't need to worry about that right now. So here we can see there's these checkboxes: autoplay background music, autoplay background sound. These are if you want to. So it makes the background music change automatically when moving to the map. So when you go into this map, if you have this checked and you click these little 3 dots here and you pick a song that you want it to play, then it will change the music to whatever song you picked when you go to that map. Same with the background sounds. If you want to play a river sound because you're close to a river all of a sudden, or if you want to play a city sound because you're close to a city, then that's how you would do that. And then on your next map, you can change it to something else if you want, or have it not play a sound at all. That's what the other option is for none. If you want it to go back to no background music, then you just click none and set that. And then specify battle back. That's a big tooltip. It says displays the specified battleground when a battle occurs on this map. When not specified, a battleground conforming to the terrain is automatically selected for world maps. And for other maps, a processed image of the map screen will be used as a background. Yeah, so what that means, I'll just show you in here a little bit. So here we have the backgrounds for the, in the battle system. So you'll be transported to a screen and it'll show this. And you can choose the bottom half with this left column here, and the top half with the, or I guess it's the background you could say, with the right column here, and you can mix and match. So you can do, some of them don't really make that much sense to be mixed and matched, like this crystal cave with a cobblestone floor, but you can make it, pretty interesting stuff, a little variety. It's pretty cool. You can do both things. And you can even have none, and it just goes back into like fog. So, so you can do that, and then if you don't specify anything, then what it'll do is it'll just show the current map that you're on, and it kind of blurs it a little bit, and then and it'll make that blurry version of the map that you're on, as the background for your battle. I kind of like that effect, but it just depends on what people are looking for. So disable dashing, this check button says makes it impossible to perform a dash on the map. So I'd say that's a pretty limited use case to where you would want to do that. But if you ever needed to stop a player from being able to run faster, then you could check that checkbox on that map, and it would stop them from doing that for that map. So usually it's to press a button, or there's an option in the game's options to make it so the dash is always on. That way the player will move around the main map. I think it's like twice as fast or so as they normally do. Maybe it's a time and a half, I'm not sure, but that's what that's talking about. So the parallax background, we'll go into that maybe later, but I'll just show you. So you can do, like, skies are probably one of the most useful things of it, but you can do mountains and things. So what this will do, and I didn't show this, but what this will do is you can have an empty space on your background where it's just transparent squares, and then if you do that, say you can do sky behind it or whatever. So instead of grass, like say if the grass ended like right about here, then you would see this much of this sky image behind it, for example. So it's useful for like if you're showing like maybe you're on a cliff or something and you want the cliff to end at the top, and you want to see like other mountains in the distance with the sky or something. Like you could have the grass part end pretty close to where it does in this picture, for example, and then you'd be able to see this stuff after it if your character walked up to the edge of the cliff or whatever, that sort of thing. Useful for oceans too. You can have a beach, and the beach could go to right here or something, and sand tiles, and then in the background you see, oh look, there's an ocean or whatever. So that's kind of what that's for. It's basically an image that goes underneath the map, if you want to think of it that way, behind the map, and then you can see it. And then you can also, here it says loop horizontally and loop vertically. You can have it move around, so it loops the parallax background horizontally. So for some reason you wanted the whole mountain to move left to right and scroll, you could do that. It makes the most sense with things like this dark space, or maybe the clouds. If you're trying to show movement, like you're moving through the sky, maybe you could use this one, move it left or right or something. It works pretty good for this starlit sky one. You can have that kind of scrolling or whatever, as like you're going through space or whatever you want to do. And then there's this checkbox down here that says show in the editor. And by default it's checked. It says displays the parallax background in the map editor. It says this may appear differently than in the actual game. So that's if you want to see it. And I usually leave that checked just so I remember that I have a parallax background on the map or whatever. And then on the right side we have this whole encounters section, and this is for battles. So let me see the tooltip here. It says list of the troops for random encounters. So yeah, so if you want random battles, this is where you add them on the map. I'll just right click and go to edit, and then it says troop and weight. So you pick which enemy troop you want. These are ones that are in by default, just to try to show you. So you could pick, okay, we want to run into an encounter with bats, and a battle with bats. And the weight, whoops, I messed that up. It says value that affects the frequency at which the troop is encountered. So I think it's the higher number, the more frequent. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the higher the number, the more often you'll encounter it. So if you had one that's weight of 5 and one that was weight of 2, for example, the weight of 2 one wouldn't come around as often as the weight of 5 one. So if you want to have a little bit more rare enemy encounter or whatever, you can lower the weight number compared to the other ones that you're using on that map. So here, and then this range, it says you can use the entire map or specify by region ID. So here's what the regions that I briefly talked about before would do. And this is one of the ways you can use the regions is you can make it so monsters and enemies or whatever will appear in just a certain spot of a map, not necessarily everywhere. So that's pretty much what the map properties mean for now, though. Even though with all that explaining, we're just going to leave it just like this. We don't have to worry about most of these settings. We'll just hit OK.